now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a dark side. On the morning of February 11th, 2013, people were arriving at the Newcastle County Courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware, for what should have been a routine day. Instead, chaos erupted in the lobby. Stephen Reinhardt, a corporal with the Delaware Capitol Police, described what he saw, saying, quote, "I could see there was a man chasing a woman. He opened fire on her. As the woman fell, the shooter turned his attention to another woman. He chased her and fired several more shots. Officer Reinhardt drew his weapon and ordered the gunman to drop his gun. Instead, the man turned the weapon on himself." According to reporter Chris Barish, quote, "The man, while he's standing there, takes a gun and blows his head off." No one could make sense of the carnage, but as investigators began digging into the case, they discovered that the shooting was only the final chapter of a conflict that had been building for years. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, your weekly true crime podcast telling you cases of relationships that turn to murder. I am your host, Kai, and today's case is about a custody battle that became so obsessive and so vindictive that it ended with gunfire inside a courthouse and a landmark cyberstalking conviction that changed legal history. But before we get back into that, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're on. You can also subscribe to the podcast for free through our Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. As a free sub, you won't miss any episodes as they're emailed directly to you. And you also get some bonuses. But if you want more Kai, more cases, more ranting, then become part of the Lamb Fam by choosing any of the paid tiers we have there, starting at $3 a month and above. As part of the Lamb Fam, you don't get intros like this one, so we get directly into the case. You also don't get commercials, but you do get more cases like the after show coming up after this case. That starts at the $3 a month and above. And like the last bonus I have in there about the case of a little girl who was supposed to be finally safe. Instead, after her death, investigators began uncovering allegations that would leave an entire community asking how something like this could happen without someone stepping in sooner. After you listen to that case, you're going to have so many questions. You're also going to probably flip your phone over because that case pissed me off. Join the Lamb Fam for that full case. Also ad-free listening, exclusive bonus episodes, and more stories you won't hear anywhere else. Patreon.com/Love and Murder to join now and listen now. Oh, and not only do you get that bonus, but you also get back bonuses too. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. Now let's get back into this case of Chistine Belford. Chistine Belford, who was 39 years old at the time of this case, was from Newark, Delaware, with one daughter from a previous marriage that had ended in 1988. In 1999, she started dating David Thomas Matusiewicz, and the two married in 2011. At the time, David was an optometrist who owned a successful practice, and Chistine worked as the office manager. Together, they had three daughters: Laura, born in 2002, Leigh, born in 2003, and Karen, born in 2005. However, his personal life was complicated by his parents, 68-year-old former New Jersey police officer Thomas Matusiewicz and Lenore Matusiewicz, who moved into the couple's house in 2003 because they couldn't afford to live on their own, which is not a problem for some in-laws. It just depends on how much they get into your life, you know? So I guess with this arrangement, it actually caused tension inside the household, and Chistine later felt that her in-laws had inserted themselves into decisions involving the children and family life. That's exactly what I was talking about. You know, it's not a problem as long as the in-laws know their place in the household and their boundaries, but when those boundaries are constantly crossed, then it can become a bit of a problem. By January 2006, the marriage had reached its breaking point. Chistine and David separated. Their divorce was finalized in February 2007, and the court awarded shared custody of the children. What followed after that was a bitter custody battle. David claimed Chistine was an unfit mother, but a psychologist noted that David himself had significant issues, seeing, quote, the world from his perspective only, which actually most people do that. So for a psychologist to say that, he had to be, I'm going to say allegedly, significantly narcissistic. And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not diagnosing anybody with anything. I'm just saying most people see the world from their perspective only. So for a psychologist to say this, like, imagine how much, like how high, how hard he had to see the world from his perspective only. So despite David's allegations and claims, the court maintained the custody arrangement. In August 2007, David asked Chistine for permission to take the children on a 2-week trip to Disney World. Lenore was supposed to accompany them, so Chistine agreed. The 2 weeks came and went, but David never brought the girls home. After a short time, Chistine reported the children missing. The investigation, led by Detective Jeff Schreiner, began looking into the disappearance, and they discovered that David had spent months prepping for the trip. He had sold his optometry practice for approximately $900,000 and emptied his house of furniture. For the next 18 to 19 months, David and Lenore moved the children through Central America, eventually settling in Nicaragua while authorities searched for them. The family lived in an RV, which served as their primary residence while they remained fugitives. During that time, David worked to separate the girls emotionally from their mother. He told his oldest daughter, Laura, that Chistine was dead. While David and Lenore were hiding the children, law enforcement agencies in the United States continued searching. And because the search spanned across borders, Detective Schreiner enlisted the U.S. Marshals to conduct a search that extended countrywide and beyond. Investigators tried to get information from David's father and his sister, Amy Gonzalez, but this endeavor turned out to be fruitless, so they decided to follow the money and David's digital footprint. Detectives analyzed financial transactions and toll records to map out the family's movements. A major lead developed when it was discovered that David had forged Chistine's signature on mortgage documents for their marital home. This fraud allowed him to funnel money directly into his parents' bank accounts and get more money. By subpoenaing the family's financial records, investigators realized they had purchased a motorhome, which then allowed authorities to issue a bolo for that specific vehicle. Detectives were also able to track the family's email communications, which provided further clues to their whereabouts. Finally, on March 12, 2009, can you imagine being away from your kids for so long and just worrying about them that long? Authorities located them living in the motorhome in Nicaragua. Investigators flew to Central America along with Chistine. David and Lenore were taken into custody without incident, and the children were reunited with their mother. Both David and Lenore were extradited back to the United States, where they eventually pleaded guilty to crimes related to kidnapping. In December 2009, David was sentenced to 48 months in federal prison, while Lenore received just 18 months. On January 8, 2010, Chistine successfully petitioned the court to terminate David's parental rights, as well as Thomas's and Lenore's grandparental rights. So, what did you get from doing that? Did you think she was just going to lay down and let you take her children? Like, I'm just wondering, what was the thought process behind this? And then you went to South America for some reason, thinking that our officers can't cross international borders. I mean, you work with other police officers. You don't go into their jurisdiction, but you work with them. And then you get caught, you come back, and you lose everything. What was the point? You were granted half custody. So it's not like you lost your children. I mean, now you lost your children, but that was on you. Like, I know divorce and split-in parental rights can be hard, but like in this situation, he had half. It's not like he never got to see his kids or only got to see his kids like one day a week or something like that. So you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand it. So during the proceedings of terminating his parental rights, David continued to attack Chistine's fitness as a mother. He and his family used the court battle as a platform to repeat scandalous and pernicious accusations. Okay, so I don't know that word. I might have said it incorrectly, so let me spell it out for you. Pernicious, pernicious. That's what it looks like to me. Anyway, these accusations claimed that Chistine had sexually abused their eldest daughter. Wow, now they're just going just low. Really? David attempted to use these allegations to justify his prior criminal conduct and to regain custody of the children. Yeah, right. During the custody hearing, and while David and Lenore were behind bars, their campaign against Chistine did not stop. It only evolved into a years-long, three-pronged campaign designed to stalk, harass, and intimidate her. They even enlisted Thomas and Amy to help carry it out. Now, I don't care what family members, siblings, cousins, anybody asks me to help them break the law, you know I'm not helping. I'm not breaking the law, and I'm not helping you break the law. One of the most important tools in that campaign was a website called Grandmother's Impossible Choice. The site portrayed Chistine as a crazed, mentally unstable child molester and repeated allegations that she had sexually abused her daughters. Something, I know this is the second time I'm saying this, so I want to point out that it was completely false. The family sent letters and emails to Chistine's church, her children's schools, and people in her community directing them to the online accusations. These people have way too much time on their hands for something that they did to themselves. They also posted videos to YouTube and hired private investigators, a real estate agent, and other third parties to gather information about Chistine. In private writings, they referred to Chistine as the whore bitch. Thomas wrote to Amy, quote, "We must drink to WB's, whore bitch's, final days." And Lenore said in a letter that she, quote, "should have killed the bitch when she had the chance." David even cited a passage about hanging milestones around the necks of those who harm children. As the campaign continued, the children became aware of what's happening because children are not stupid. They realized that they were being watched and monitored by members of the Matsuwitz family. The situation caused substantial emotional distress and left them living in constant fear. Meanwhile, David's accusations against Chistine continued to fall apart. So I told you his parental rights were terminated, and that was because in August 2011, a Delaware family court judge had rejected all of his allegations of abuse and said that what he's trying to allege were baseless and made up. And because you're the one who's acting like out of your freaking mind, I'm terminating your parental rights because you're harming your kids and you don't even look like you care. So as we well know, instead of learning their lessons, they just continued on. And that's when they started building the website and doing all kind of crazy crap. So that was between January 8th, 2010 and August 2011. So, in all this time, instead of trying to be on their best behavior ever, they're setting up websites, harassing this woman, sending emails, sending letters, all of this stuff. And the consequences of their actions came to fruition. They lost parental rights. And even though their actions caused this, they learned absolutely nothing. And they just continued harassing this woman. By 2012, David had completed his prison sentence and moved to Texas, where he lived with Thomas, Lenore, and Amy. By the way, all of this was happening while he was in prison. So he's out now, he's living with his family, and he's still trying to regain access to his children, but not in any kind of sane, rational, or correct form or fashion. Instead, they just continued repeating their claims against Chistine publicly. Later that year, David wanted to travel to the East Coast, but had restrictions because of his probation. You can't just do what you want. Between September and November 2012, requests to travel to New Jersey were denied. Then, on November 9th, 2012, David filed a petition in Delaware seeking a reduction in his child support obligations. I thought you wanted them. So why you need the reduction in your child support now? Well, by filing this petition, this guaranteed a court hearing that Chistine would be required to attend. On January 8, 2013, David received permission to travel to Delaware for the hearing, but what he failed to tell his probation officer was that Thomas and Lenore would be traveling with him. Between February 4th and February 7th, 2013, David, Thomas, and Lenore drove from Texas to the Delaware Valley in 2 cars, packed with arsenal, firearms, thousands of rounds of ammunition, restraints, a military-style knife, an electric shock device, binoculars, gas cans, a shovel, a bulletproof vest, and pictures of Chistine's house. On the morning of February 11th, 2013, David and Thomas entered the courthouse at 7:30 a.m. Video surveillance showed David hug his father one last time before David passed through the security to another floor. Thomas remained in the lobby. A short time later, around 8 a.m., Chistine arrived at the courthouse accompanied by her friend Laura Beth Mulford. As soon as they got there, Thomas opened fire. He shot Chistine multiple times in the chest before killing Beth and then himself. David was arrested at the courthouse that same day for violating the terms of his probation. I already see why this happened. I haven't even gone further, but I already see why this happened. He had his father do it. He's probably going to claim he had no knowledge of it, but being that the mother's dead, he thinks he's automatically going to now get custody of these children. I don't think he was banking on being arrested. Even though Thomas was dead, authorities were convinced the entire family was responsible. They think they're smarter than police and everybody. The evidence pointed towards years of planning, coordination, and a shared purpose. Shockingly, just 2 days after the murder, Amy filed a petition for custody of Chistine's children. Is she serious? She filed it using a check dated the day after the shooting to pay for the filing fee. Meanwhile, authorities continued reviewing years of emails, letters, website recordings, and the family communications. Basically, everything I went through with you. In addition to all of that, investigators found what was described as a hit list containing the names of judges, attorneys, and others connected to David's legal troubles. They weren't done. They also recovered what appeared to be death certificates made out in the names of Chistine and her attorney. While this investigation was being conducted, Lenore and Amy remained free, during which they continued to record and post defamatory videos targeting Chistine, who's dead. Are you kidding me right now? Later, prosecutors argued that the courthouse shooting was not an isolated act, but the foreseeable outcome of a conspiracy that had been building for years. And in August 13, the grand jury finally indicted David, Lenore, and Amy on charges including interstate stalking and cyberstalking, resulting in death. Their trial started in June 2015 and lasted 6 weeks. It also became the first ever federal conviction for cyberstalking, resulting in death. Lead prosecutor Jamie McCall and his team argued that the shooting was not a lone wolf act by Thomas, but a symbolic attack on a judicial system the family loathed. They presented the hit list and other evidence they'd found. As for David telling Laura that her mother had committed suicide when she was a little girl, U.S. Attorney Ed McAndrew described that lie was a, quote, very, very devious, evil thing to say to a child. Then, to prove the stalking was malicious, the government called Chistine's oldest daughter, Laura, to testify. Laura, who was now a young woman, looked the jury in the eye and swore that her mother had never abused her, debunking the central lie of the family's years-long campaign, which the family would just say, oh, she's just brainwashed. The defense, led by David's attorney, Dina Shavar, argued that the family was simply, quote, misunderstood and frustrated with a system that didn't listen to their concerns. Ma'am, How are you representing these people? There is literal evidence galore pointing to the horrid things these people have done. And you're labeling them as misunderstood and frustrated? They claim David had no part in the murder. Didn't I tell you that's what they were going to try? Didn't I tell you that? And that the letters, including the one where David told Amy there would be no more playing Mr. Nice Guy, were just expressions of a father who felt defenseless. Yeah, right. The defense even tried to introduce polygraph results for Lenore and Amy to suggest they truly believed the abuse allegations. But Judge Gerald Austin McHugh excluded them, noting that polygraphs are generally unreliable in court. After weeks of testimony on July 10th, 2015, David, Lenore, and Amy were found guilty on all counts. Sentencing followed in February 2016. Judge McHugh described the crimes as a crime of malice that had robbed Chistine's daughters of both their mother and their childhood innocence. 70-year-old Lenore was sentenced to life in prison while laying in a hospital bed in Philadelphia. Family members told the court that she was terminally ill and had only months to live. She should have thought about that. All that time you spent harassing this woman, you should have thought about that. Y'all are probably saying, oh, Kai, that's so mean. She should have thought about that. You spent years harassing this woman, and these children are now like traumatized, and on top of that, lost their mother. And I'm supposed to feel sorry for you that you got life in prison and you're laying in a bed about to die? Like I said before, how much time did you have on your hand? I could have named thousands of other things that I could have been doing with my time instead of building websites, sending out letters to harass a woman, hiring private investigators. All that time, you should have been spent living life, trying to mend a bond with her so you could see your grandchildren instead of going the opposite route. So no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, lambs. I'm really not sorry, but I don't feel sorry for her. David, now 48 years old, and Amy were also sentenced to life in prison. David showed no emotion as he was sentenced. During her sentencing, Amy told the court what she said, quote, I cry for them every day, and I pray for them every single day. You're the one who put them in this position. You're crying for something that y'all did? What the hell are you talking about, woman? You know what would have been better than your stank-ass crocodile tears? Their mother being there. Nobody wants to hear about you crying for them. How the hell, first of all, did you make this about you? Oh, my God, some people. Acting U.S. Attorney David Weiss said the life sentences were necessary to protect Chistine's children, quote, and anyone else in this community who happened to draw the ire of the Matsuwitz defendants. Kevin Perkins of the FBI said the case demonstrated that people who help plan crimes can be held accountable, even if they don't pull the trigger. See why I'm not helping nobody commit a crime? Nope. More than a decade later, the case remains one of the most significant cyberstalking prosecutions in U.S. history. What started as a custody dispute grew into a years-long campaign of harassment, intimidation, and surveillance that ultimately ended in gunfire inside a courthouse lobby. And while Thomas was the one who pulled the trigger, federal prosecutors successfully convinced a jury that the years of stalking, threats, and manipulation and planning that came before it made the rest of the family responsible as well. Woo! What did you think of this case? You heard my thoughts, and now I want to hear from you. Do you believe the rest of the Matsuwitz family was just as responsible for Chistine's death as Thomas, who pulled the trigger? Or do you think there's a difference between stalking someone for years and actually committing murder? I mean, there is, but to me, it all tied together, culminated into this situation. And I'm telling you, they knew exactly what they were doing. They, pulled straws, or the father said, look, I've lived my life and whatever, I'll do this for you. And that's why he hugged his father. He knew what he was doing. They all knew it. I don't believe for 1 second that they didn't know what was happening, especially since they all drove down with 2 cars full of guns and ammunition. And nobody opened the trunk and was like, what's this here? Nobody saw the grenade launcher in the backseat and was like, is that a grenade launcher? Are you trying to tell me that only Thomas knew this? Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. So again, you heard more of my thoughts. So I want to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, today's show does have an after show coming up, and that case covers the case of a 300-pound woman who killed her boyfriend by sitting on him. Yes, you heard me. What started as an argument ended with a 911 call, a dead boyfriend, and a courtroom battle over whether it was a deliberate act of violence or a bizarre accident caused by drugs, alcohol, and bad decisions. So for the after show, you join the Patreon starting at only $3 a month to hear the full story, enjoy ad-free listening, enjoy intro-free listening, and you support the podcast like that. Patreon.com/Love and Murder to join and listen now. In addition to this after show and the previous bonus I told you about, there is a new bonus coming out this weekend. So head on over to the Patreon, join over there, and I look forward to seeing you as part of the Lamb fam. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and end this episode by saying, you know what we're going to say already. Say it with me now. All love and no murder, y'all. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for being lambs. And I will see you in the next episode. Unless you join the Patreon, and then I'll see you in a couple seconds in the after show. Bye.